Uh-oh, looks like Hermes made an oopsie.
What? The infallible Hermes of reason made an oopsie.
Yes, it's true. In my last video, I said some things that I was wrong to say. Nah, just kidding. I actually just didn't explain it as clearly as I could have, so second time's the charm. So it's critical mindfulness again, baby, but this time explained and with memes. So in Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion, he emphasizes the problem of being lost in thought and how that kind of general distraction, or what he calls thinking without knowing that we're thinking, is a huge problem. And the reason why it's a problem is because, what he calls being lost in thought is basically a way in which we get distracted from living the lives that we actually want to live. So the case for mindfulness meditation here, which is a central part of his book, a central practice that he tries to teach, is that it will help us quickly notice when we are unthinkingly being led astray from living the lives that we want. And this is actually happening everywhere. People say binge eat, even when they know that they don't really want to binge eat, or they know they have like a problem with that, but they will still do it anyway. Now, what Sam Harris calls lost in thought, or thinking without knowing that we're thinking, isn't actually thinking. Thought is error correction. And so, in the case of binge eating, in spite of knowing that that's not really what you want, you have to not be thinking. It's not just your thinking is elsewhere. It is that you are actually not error correcting in that moment. Now, it's a common misconception to think that meditation is about becoming thoughtless, but I think rather what Sam Harris is really trying to say is that it is about becoming more thoughtful, where you are actually able to have like this kind of critical distance from you doing something unthinkingly, to where then you can sort of like remind yourself, oh yeah, I don't actually want to do this. I don't actually want to binge eat. I'm not actually, still hungry and that type of thing. So it opens the door to creative criticism there in that moment. So in a very similar way that Sam Harris describes it, what mindfulness can get you to recognize is that you are not the, appearances in your mind per se, but you are more like the mind space in which those appearances are coming and going. And so you're almost like the room of consciousness rather than what's in that room. Now, arguably, the defining quality of what makes a mind is its creativity. And creativity is dynamic. The whole notion of kind of going from one thing to another, and you might say being distracted, is actually like a necessary feature of our creativity, being able to, rearrange and combine existing things and try to solve different problems and stuff like that. I mean, we have like a whole range of stuff that we could potentially be interested in, or a whole range of interesting problems that we could be interested in solving. And so it's necessary that we're able to kind of like go from one thing to another in that way. So distraction is only a problem insofar as it relates to not actually thinking. But the ability to kind of have a wide range of things that you're interested in and kind of just hop from one thing to another and explore all of them in a way is a good thing. I mean, if you're solving problems and you're having fun and stuff like that, there's nothing to worry about. Although, given that our minds work in this way, the space of, potentially moving from one thing to another is the space in which unthinkingness, or you might even call it irrationality, rears its head or takes advantage of and exploits. And there are real things out there that are looking to take advantage of that dynamic capacity of our minds. And those things are what David Deutsch, in his book, The Beginning of Infinity, and in particular his chapter, The Evolution of Culture, calls anti-rational memes. So a meme is like a behavior with this corresponding meaning or idea that gets itself replicated in the same way that genes get themselves replicated, namely by just simply outcompeting their rivals. And the anti-rational memes do this by suppressing creative criticism, while there are rational memes which rather encourage creative criticism. So especially the anti-rational memes that suppress creative criticism, they have to take advantage of this space or potential for doing things unthinkingly. Because if you were thinking, that means you'd be error correcting. That means you would be using creative criticism. And as we know, this potential for doing things unthinkingly comes out of this space where we're able to be sort of distracted and dynamic, going from one thing to another. And so what the anti-rational memes do is they hijack that space and entrench certain patterns of behavior that we can do unthinkingly. And again, they have to do that, otherwise we would be able to recognize them quickly and error correct our way out of doing them. So it's been a while since I've read Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, where, this is where I first learned about mindfulness meditation. But I highly doubt that he talks about memes in the book. But I do think that there is a sense in which, or you could just say irrationalities. I think that there's a sense in which being able to be more thoughtful and mindful about your space of thinking or capacity to think in a moment in which you might not be thinking can be extremely valuable to overcome your irrationalities. Of course, that is just kind of one step in the right direction. You need other kind of creative and conceptual type criticisms in order to actually not just fall right back into that pattern of behavior. So I will link to Sam Harris's book in the description below, but I also highly recommend and will link to David Deutsch's book, The Beginning of Infinity, for more on memes, how knowledge works, a little bit about irrationality. The Beginning of Infinity is my favorite book of all time, so highly recommend that you get that, and you can, get both for kind of maybe some kind of convergence on the two in regard to maybe how to unshackle from our irrationalities. And that is all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you next time. Keep making progress.